Welcome to the Karuna Life, a podcast dedicated to exploring the connection between spirituality and everyday life. I'm Gina Kitzmiller. I'm an intuitive, a Reiki master teacher, Akashic Records facilitator, and founder of Trimatri Reiki. As a longtime spiritual seeker, my goal is to help you navigate the complexities of the spiritual world, learn how to enhance your intuition, and lead a heart-centered life. Join me as we unravel the mysteries of energy work and metaphysical practices. We'll dive into high vibrational conversations with experts and personal storytellers and learn how to recognize and communicate with those in spirit. So get ready to embrace your inner mystic and explore the realms of the unseen. Welcome to the Karuna Life. I'm Gina Kitzmiller, and today I have a very special guest with me. Her name is Deb Schaffer, and she is the creative heart behind Enchanted Botanicals, a magical lifestyle brand built around the belief that real life gets better when you add a little ritual. Deb is a spiritual herbalist, an energy intuitive, and natural magic coach. She creates intentional tools like candles and incense to help you reconnect with your own personal power. And her work blends plant wisdom with everyday enchantment, making magic feel as natural as morning tea. She's the author of Notes from an Enchanted Garden and a devoted teacher of plant magic, both online and in person. Whether she's mixing herbs, lighting candles, or guiding women back to their inner knowing, Deb's soul mission is always the same: to help you live the most beautiful, magical life, one grounded, wild, and rooted moment at a time. I have been a longtime fan of her work for the last several years, and it is a real honor to have her on the show today. So, Deb, thank you so much for being with me.
Gina, thank you. I'm honored and just tickled to be here with you doing this today.
So for the listeners, I wanted to share a little bit about how you and I came to know each other. And it's been a few years now, but I was in a spa here in Columbus, Ohio. And the owner showed me these really beautiful candles with crystals, and there was an energy spray. And she said, "You have to check this out. This is Enchanted Botanicals, and the energy in them is amazing. And I know you'll feel it." And I did. And I was absolutely hooked from the beginning. I bought a bunch of stuff there. I came home and then I Googled your website. And then I have been purchasing things from you for years now.
Years.
And I laugh that my house literally has something from you, I think, in every room. And if for the listeners, if you could be in my office, I have the crystals hanging in the background, your candles on my desk. And I really find that there is a definite unique vibration and energy to everything that you do. So, for the listener who doesn't know you, can you talk a little bit about Enchanted Botanicals and what it is you do?
Sure. It's kind of a fun little name. And I started, well, it's a really long, kind of interesting story. Gosh, almost 20 years ago now, I was diagnosed with a very aggressive breast cancer, and my oncologist gave me 2 years. And our son at the time was 13, had literally entered his first day of 8th grade. And it was one of those moments that you hear people talk about, where you sit down and you have that chat with God. And I remember one of the most important things was that I did not ask for myself, but I made it clear that I did not see my story ending this way, that I knew there were other things I needed to be doing, and I refused to leave my son without a mother, probably by the time he was 15. So I said, okay, God, let me be your hands here. Show me what you want me to do, and I will totally do it. And I got so blessed. I was randomized into a chemo trial, which is now protocol. So yay for that. And when I was doing my radiation oncology, the office offered all of these other modalities, energy healing and guided meditation. And I kind of was intrigued by the energy healing part. Had not really heard too much about it, never dove into it. And I have to be honest, my experience there it was ridiculous. I mean, nobody explained anything about what was going on, and they have chairs set up around the perimeter of this room, and there were 2 or 3 massage tables that they put up, and then people were running for the tables, and I thought, "What is happening here?" And then they turn down the lights and, turn up the meditation music, and I just sat there watching, well, the practitioners move around the people on the tables. And I thought, well, that looks kind of fun. And I remember the lady next to me fell asleep. She's snoring. I'm still thinking, okay, they're going to certainly switch and have other people on there. Nope. Lights came up, music's off, bang go the tables, and everybody's out. And I'm left like, what did I just experience? And I think this is probably not for me. And the next day I went back because, with radiation, you have to go every day. So I saw the social worker the next day and she's like, "How did it go?" And I said, "Well, I really didn't get it. I don't know what that was all about." And she said, "You know what? I mean, I had already been kicked out of like group therapy because I didn't get that either." So I'm very much a solo practitioner in whatever I do, obviously. So she recommended that I seek out a practitioner where I could, do a one-on-one session. And honestly, that was the best thing. And I just felt compelled to start studying it. And I went through so many teachers, and because I think that one should never stop with one teacher, because everybody, as a teacher, we all have different skills. We have different things that we focus on, and you can learn things from one teacher and from another teacher learn what you don't want to incorporate in your practice. So I think there's a benefit to being a serial student, which I was for many years, and became a master teacher in a number of different modalities, and then ultimately pulled together my own healing practice. And I love to work with the earth. I'm a Virgo, so I'm an earth sign. I'm just born to do it. And I remember being outside one day and thinking about the earth energy work that I do and how I wanted to find some products that would help me go a little bit deeper into a meditation, maybe more quickly or deeper, or connect with my angels and my guides more easily. And, this has happened a few times in my life where I will swear on a Bible that I think it's God coming through and talking to me. And they told me to look in my gardens because I have been a lifelong gardener. And because I'd been looking online and everything was either too dark, it didn't feel aligned, it was too spooky. And, that was kind of the era when the witchy stuff was really starting to come out of the broom closet. And that's all I was finding. And um, for people who don't know me, I probably look like, not physically look like, but from what I do, it could be considered a little witchy, but I liken it more to Glinda the Good Witch, from Wizard of Oz. And anyway, so I was directed to go to my garden and start making things. So I collected petals and leaves that I felt drawn to and created my first incense. And from there, I created a candle. And then my clients kept asking for more things and more things. And pretty soon there was Enchanted Botanicals. And I know that's a really long answer to your very quick question, but I think in a nutshell, what I do, it's very intention driven, it's very purpose driven, and I create products that I call tools. And these are tools that people can use for their own spiritual or energetic and or magical practice. I caution people that they are tools for you to use. Nothing that anybody makes is going to do the work for you. And I like to give the example of if you need to get a picture hung up on the wall, you need to get the nail in the wall. So you pick up a hammer to hammer that nail in. And my tools are like the hammer. The hammer doesn't levitate itself and smash that nail into the wall. You are the power, you are the magic, you are the energy behind those tools. The hammer just helps you get the nail in, and my tools help you do the work that you need to do. So whether it's intention work or magic work or prayer work, whatever you need them to be, most of them the formulas are channeled through my spiritual team, my angels, my guides. And then I do have products that I create. I say I get to create them because the spiritual side of my product line very much channeled. Every formula, I sit down with my team and I say, okay, here's the idea I came up with. And then I ask them to tell me which herbs go in, which flowers go in, which crystals, which essential oils. And so it's very much a download of divine energy that is applied to each one of these tools. So whether it's a candle or an incense or, whatever it is, they are created to be these beautiful, supportive, loving tools that people can use to elevate their own spiritual practice. So, yeah, in about 10 minutes, Gina.
I love it. I have so many follow-up questions. So my
Okay, go
first
for it.
Oh, I love it because you just touched on so many. I'm like trying to figure out where I wanna go. So one question that came into my head, and then I have another one after that, is did you notice, because you're so high vibration, and I think it really does reflect in all the work and the products that you do. Did you notice a shift over those years, like as you were going through treatment and as you came into energy work, or were you always this kind of high vibration person
Um,
and energetic?
you know what? I think I was born this way, as probably most of us are, but I did not grow up in a family that was aware of any of these little superpowers, for lack of a better word. I've always been into plants, and I was the kid who thought that there was a ghost living in my bedroom growing up, and nobody else believed me. But I had proof, there were things happening. And so I was just always kind of the little white sheep of the family, and grew up very Catholic, going to Catholic schools, and, parents who just had never been exposed to anything outside a religion. And I think that a religion and spirituality are two different things, but they certainly can support each other. And so to answer your question, yeah, I think that I've always been this way, that it was pushed under the rug for so many years because I certainly didn't have the words to explain what was happening. And I mean, my dad was a Navy pilot, so we grew up having to live to a certain set of rules. And I mean, including fingernail inspections. I kid you not.
Oh, goodness.
I know, right? So here's my fingernails right now. They're looking pretty. So, we grew up very rule based, which is quite different from living in an energy sort of lifestyle. And when I went through my chemo, it was very interesting because my I call them superpowers for lack of a better word, but everybody's got them. They kind of took a nosedive. They were just closed off. And I And very interestingly, you know that little phenomenon, déjà vu?
Mhm.
As soon as I started my chemo, that ended. Have not had one of those experiences in 20 years. So, yeah, I don't know what that's all about, except that maybe I elevated above that. Maybe that's not a skill that I need anymore. But to get back to the chemo, everything just froze. And I was getting nothing. There were no downloads, there were no signs. And I am one of those people that I tell my clients, I tell people who come to me that the universe and we as people don't speak the same language. You know, it's not like the universe speaks only English or only Spanish or
True.
only French. So we need to look for that common language, which is signs and symbols. So, you know, when we're talking to God or talking to the universe, we say, oh, please show me a sign, right? We don't say, speak English into my right ear, French into my left ear, so I can. It doesn't work that way. So, but all of my signs and symbols stopped. It was like radio silence. And I finally came to the conclusion that that was kind of it was a timeout for me where I could focus on healing my body and not be distracted by all of these other
That's how
things.
I'm seeing it too. It feels like they took you offline almost, like she
Right.
was taken offline so we could kinda do some tech work behind the scenes and then, like, reboot you is how my guides are showing me.
Exactly. Because after that, it was like everything went bonkers and like totally bananas. It was on like, gosh, you know, like when you do a speeded up kind of video thing, and it has not stopped. And I'm now almost 18 years past what I call my expiration date. And every day I wake up thinking, I really can't wait to wake up and get back to what I'm doing because I'm so drawn to it. I'm so positive that this is what I'm meant to do. That cracking open point in my life, and you know we all have them, where things just they hit rock bottom. And but was it Rube? Some people say it's Rumi, some people say it's Johnny Depp. With that quote about when the seed cracks open, that's where the light comes in.
Yes, I've heard
And
that.
it's such a beautiful quote, and I think it's so appropriate for all of us as people who are just going through stuff. And it could be a small seed, it could be a huge walnut seed, it could be, you know, anything. But it's a cracking open moment where that divine light comes in and says, here's what I want you to do next. Here's your next mission, 007, should you choose to accept it. And I think that we always have a choice to accept it or not. But if you do, it's like, it's the most amazing thing because you receive more and more. And I'm not talking about receiving prosperity necessarily because, I mean, not many of us can create $1 million business. And guess what? We're not all supposed to. I think that the human experience requires those of us who are sort of the behind the scenes people designing the sets or designing the costumes or writing the script for other people's how other people's lives are going to play out. So not that we're the supporting actors, but we're supporting
I
other people to reach their potential, to open up and accept their mission.
I
So
love that. And what strikes me is the expansiveness of it. When you tell that story, you know, and you're having this conversation with God, it's this like, I'm open, right? You tell me,
you
what do you
tell me.
want me to do? Instead of, I'm going to need it to look like this. And then you can feel that like constraint of like, it has to be in this box. It has to look this way. And instead you kind of threw the doors open and said, okay, I'm in, which I think did allow it to become so much more and bigger and expansive rather than you
Mhm.
saying, here's the one thing that my human mind can think of that I can offer. You really threw the doors open and just allowed God to work through you, which I think is why it's as big
Yeah.
as it is, if that makes
Well,
sense.
and I love that because if I love to say that the universe has a wicked sense of humor. And
Very true.
if I were to say, "Okay, this is how I want it to look," they would be saying, "Yeah, right, girl. Here's what you're gonna get." You're not gonna get that designer handbag. We're gonna throw you the disposable shopping bag
Mhm.
from, like, the giant grocery store or something. So and make a dress out of it. They're gonna throw you stuff, and so my job was to follow those breadcrumbs. I had an interior design firm that was really doing really well, and then I got sick and I closed my shop and I moved everything home and ultimately just became a one-person pony show. And while I was doing that design work, I was doing these other things, like studying to become a feng shui master because that really fit at that time, at that point of my mission's evolution. It fit really well with the design work. And I realized that's kind of what I'd been doing all along, working with the energy, but I didn't have those words for it then. And then like I said, I developed this practice where I work with the land energy and help to balance these naturally occurring energy lines with the people living above them. And and then I really dove into all kinds of energy work and writing. And about 6 years ago, I would say I had this other come into Jesus moment where I said, I don't know what you want me to do because now you've got me doing all of these things. And how do I do them all? It was literally a breakdown moment. It was right before Christmas. And of course, everybody thinks if they don't get their new sofa or they don't get their curtains before Santa comes down the chimney, all hell's going to break loose. And so I was serving all of these other people to the detriment of my own family. And I literally kind of fell on the floor and I just had this big old 2-year-old tantrum. And I said, I don't know what you want me to do. And my angel team, for me, they come in from my right side and they started whispering. And then the more I said, I don't know what you're saying, they started talking loud. And then pretty soon we were literally screaming at each other. And what finally came through was, we want you to do it all. And so I took a few deep breaths and I continued for a number of years to do it all. And then about 6 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, I got the big nudge slash kick in the tush that I was to give up everything else and just work with what I had brought together with Enchanted Botanicals, which is a combination of energy work and the tools to support people who are going down a beautiful path, that who are opening up to other aspects of what it means to be having a human life. And I think that the fact that I get to be a mentor and a guide to so many people and really encourage them to embrace the life that they're building, even though it's going to have its yucky moments, it's going to have its ugly moments, but there is always, always a silver lining to that. And part of my mission is just to hold their hand while they work through it and then give them a big old kiss and hug on the other side.
I love that. And sometimes
They need it.
people need that to hold the
Mhm.
space. And what struck me, what you were saying is that you see that so often, and I see that in my own life as well, where we don't see that whole completed picture. We just get little puzzle pieces and we find a modality or something that interests us and we learn about that. And then we kind of pivot and we'll be in a different direction. So for me, that's, energy work, that's Qigong, that's, these different pieces. But then
Mhm.
you start to see how it can actually be of service when the puzzle pieces all start to come together. But initially it can be frustrating because you have all these different areas of interest and you can't see how that puzzle is going to come together. And usually that just means it's not quite in that divine timing yet. That's why I always tell
Right.
people you trust it. You just follow the breadcrumbs of what interests you, what brings you joy. And eventually you'll see where those pieces are going to all come together and
Right.
fit. And I think more and more as we see, I think as we're moving into these decades, you're seeing that. You're seeing the combination of all these things along with like the personal spin and energetic to it that really makes some very unique kind of types of work and modalities that people are going to
Right.
be doing.
Right. And I think that what would happen if we were suddenly inundated with the qigong, with the energy work, with the, your angelic work, your cards? What if all of those things came at us at once? We would have to shut down because it would be too much. We couldn't absorb it. So I think you're absolutely right that the universe sends us these breadcrumbs as we are ready to nibble them up, collect them. And then we get to take them in. We can digest them and then pull in another one and just trust that at some point you're going to have that 2-year-old tantrum where you have no idea what the heck, or as my niece when she was little, she would say, "What the heck in the world, Aunt Deb?
I
What the
love
heck
that.
in the world? What the heck in the world am I supposed to be doing with all of these breadcrumbs?" And then you wake up and you're like, "Oh my gosh, you were right. It all came together and this is how I'm going to use this." And as you mentioned, this is kind of the age chronologically for us as women, as practitioners, as souls in this lifetime, this is the age where we get to create these. We don't necessarily have to follow the rules anymore. I mean, if people who are not my clients, if they saw how I practice energy medicine, they would say, "Well, that's not how you were taught." Yeah, thank goodness it's not, because I'm past that. I've pulled in these other concepts, these other divine ideas. I'm following what the divine wants me to be doing. So I don't practice the way you practice or the way anybody else practices. And that's why people are drawn to you, Gina, or they're drawn to me, or they're drawn to somebody else, because we offer different things that their energy is aligning with. And I think that that's part of our purpose as mentors, as guides, as teachers, is to put out there these different vibrational tools. And energy medicine is one of them, card readings, all of these things are tools that can be used singularly or in combination to help people elevate their vibration, which is what it's all about. If we are created in God's image, then certainly it's going to take us more than one lifetime as a human to achieve that. So I think those of us who are doing this work now are here for a big divine purpose, to empower people, to let them know there's nothing wrong with them. They're just, it's like how children all learn differently. Some of them are auditory learners, some are very visual. And we as spiritual seekers are the same. Some of us really want to have that visual of tarot decks or oracle decks. And then some of us are called to energy medicine because we like to work with our hands, or we work with those auric layers. Or some of us work with plant medicine, which is me. That was one of the things that I studied was medical herbalism. I don't know why. And I quickly gave it up because it was a lot. I mean, I got my certification, but it was a lot of pressure. And I thought, no, that's not for me. I'm very much more intuitive. I want to be free flowing. I want to be like that linen dress flowing in the breeze. I don't want to be a business suit that says this is what it needs to look like.
That's a great
So,
image, and I think when we do that, it opens it up for other people to say, "Gosh, I
mhm,
really like this part, but I'm gonna actually, do something a little bit different that makes it uniquely them," which is what makes it more powerful,
right.
rather than following this old script, and I think that 20 to 30 years ago, particularly around energy work, I think you were ahead of your time. But I feel like back then from when I first came in, it was kind of this from the top to the bottom where it was, like, almost secretive. The
Oh, yeah.
Reiki master teachers weren't gonna bestow, like, certain because they
Right.
were afraid that you might take my business.
And remember,
Um
you couldn't none of the symbols were allowed to be written
Shared,
down,
yes, it
and
was very almost secretive, but there was a
right,
little bit of kind of reminds me of the church a little bit, a separation between kind of owning your own power and your own spirituality, and I think that is starting to really fall to the wayside, which is
mhm,
exciting as more and more people say, "I'm gonna do it the way that I feel called to
right,
do it, that my
right,
soul's guiding me to," and I
right.
think that's what makes it really powerful.
I do too, and when I teach about plant medicine or plant magic, I really encourage people to run these things, run the plant energies through their own filter. Because what one plant will whisper to me could be completely different than what it says to you. And that really frustrates me when so many so-called experts will say, well, you must use this plant for such and such. And I love to use the example of mint. Mint is known to be a very protective herb. And so you would plant it maybe at the borders of your home or around your front door to energetically and symbolically, there's that word again, protect your home. And my question back to somebody who would ask me about that is, do you like mint? And if the answer is no, then why would you use it? It would be like asking your next door neighbor, who you also do not like, to water your plants or feed your dog while you're on
True.
vacation.
Or paint
It's
your
not
house a
gonna work
color
out.
that you hate, right? Like, "I hate this color, but I'm gonna paint my house,
Right.
black," and you're like, "But I don't like it."
That's exactly what I used to tell my design clients. They would say, "Oh, I love this. I wanna paint my kitchen sage green." Remember,
Yeah.
everything was sage green for a while. And I said, "Do you wear that? Do you imagine what you're gonna look like if you paint your bedroom or your bathroom sage green and you don't look good in it?" By the way, you look great in that sage green color
Yeah.
behind you, but I do not. And so why would you I mean, imagine trying to put your makeup on and feel good about yourself. It's because of the color. It's because and color has energy too. So, but to get back to the mint, choose another herb that for you feels protective. Like for me, and I love mint, but I don't use her for protection. I would go for rose. I like the vibration of it. I like the fact that mint stays low and it's kind of spreads out this way, horizontally. But rose tends to reach for the sky, reach for the stars, reach for the sun and the moon, and it's got those thorns, which means she's very protective. She protects those plants, those beings around her that she's growing over. So I would go for rose. Somebody else might go for calendula because it's bright yellow or bright orange and they see power in that. So it's the symbology of the plants. What does it mean to you? Not to me as your teacher, guide, mentor, but what does it mean to you? Do that. And I think that goes for back to what we were talking about with any of these breadcrumbs. Does it feel good and resonant to you? Are you drawn to it? Are you aligned with it? If not, there's plenty of other things out there. Let it go. go hunt down something else that makes you happy and follow that. Eat that breadcrumb.
I love
So,
that. That's
yeah.
really good, and I like that example, one, because I was thinking about planting mint around my house, which is funny because I wasn't, like, intuiting I should plant mint. Because sometimes you just go,
Uh-huh.
"I don't know, I think I'm gonna put mint, like,
Uh-huh.
on a certain area by my home," so I love that.
Yep.
But I also think that's a really great example of, when we say plant magic, because often people don't really understand what that is. So can you give another example of how someone might use, like, rose, for example, in terms of a plant magic?
Sure. Rose, I love to use rose in almost everything I formulate because rose has the highest vibration of the botanical world. Often, when we're using plants, think of sage. A lot of people will use sage. They'll light a smudge stick, they'll light a leaf, run around their house, saging it, smudging it. Guess what? It's not the sage, it's the smoke that's doing the hard work. And if sage happens to be something you love, and guess what? You don't have to use white sage. You can use regular old garden sage. When I make products that call for sage, 9 times out of 10, I'm using sage that I have grown and dried from my garden. It's the spirit of the plant that we are working with. It's the soul of the plant because sage is kick-ass at sending out smoke, which is going to do the clearing. And it does that by attracting the positive ions, which are actually the ghoulies of the energetic world. But smoke is going to attract those or catch or, yeah, catch, I guess is a good enough word. But it pulls in those positive ions that don't make us feel aligned, that feel kind of old or negative or just used up, that don't serve our highest good. And that's its job, is to help us clear that stuff out. And as it's clearing this, it's rising and carrying it out to the universe where those beings, the universe, is going to clear it up, transmute it, send it back because everything is energy. All we can hope to do is transform it into something better. So the thing with sage is once you've gone through your space and it feels really good and clear, unless you are super intentional, let me say that again, super intentional about what you're filling that space back in with, you've just left it wide open
Yes, that's very true.
and you don't know what's going to fill it. It could be the argument that, the two kids at the bus stop had. It could be your neighbor's illness or something. All of that stuff, every word, thought, look, action is energy and it's got to go somewhere. So it's going to be attracted by a nice empty space. It's like digging a hole at the edge of the ocean. And you got this great groovy hole and you turn around to check on your cooler and you look back and the water's already filled it in,
Great analogy. Yes.
right?
My guides always say that nature loves a vacuum. So if
Yes.
you clear it, you better be intentional about what you're
Yeah.
gonna fill it, or you don't know what you're gonna
What
get.
you're going to get. And it's probably not going to be anything that you expected. So that's where Rose comes in. She has the ability to hold everything sacred. So when I create any of my products, they almost always have rose in it because I don't want to leave somebody with a job half done. And so by building rose into it automatically, I've already sort of programmed it or given it the charge to hold that space sacred. So if they forget to say, oh gosh, I meant to call in $27 or a new best friend or, a Range Rover or whatever it is, they're not caught with their pants down, so to speak. I've got them covered. But rose is like that. Sometimes in plant magic, we look at what are the colors of the plants? What are their textures? What do they look like? And that goes back to this. It's a very old, centuries old practice known as the doctrine of signatures. And you look at, where does a plant grow? What is its environment? What does it look like, as an indication of what its usefulness is? So back in the day, when people literally were using plants as their medicine, they would look for things like, but they would look for things that maybe had a leaf that looked like a lung. So it had those bronchi, the leaves could be shaped like a pair of lungs, or they might have the veins that look like lungs. And that would be an indication that that could be used as for, bronchitis or coughs or something like that.
There's
So
something very reminiscent about traditional Chinese medicine in that. Don't you
yes,
like that's what it kind of when you're describing that, like they're looking for symbolism and how they were
yes.
determining what would be helpful. That's what that reminds me of.
Right. So there's that word again, symbolism. So because the universe knows we're all speaking different languages, they came up with this universal language of symbolism. So what does it look like? Where does it grow? Does it grow in a hot, dry climate? That could indicate that if you've got a wet cough, it's going to help relieve that wet cough. And so when I was studying my medical herbalism, and I thought there's more to it. I'm being drawn to the more spiritual side. So as a spiritual herbalist, I can look at, what is the traditional medicine trajectory of this plant, and how does that translate to the spiritual side? So I think a good example is echinacea, because most people know if you're starting to feel run down, you're getting a cold, grab an echinacea tablet, take some echinacea tea, and that's going to help boost your immune system. Spiritually, or what I call the parallel path, is that we work with the spirit or the soul of echinacea to boost our sense of willpower, our sense of, I can do this, I've got this. So they're very similar. One is using the plant itself with spiritual herbalism. When I teach it, I encourage my students that by the time we get through this course, you're not going to need to hold these things in your hand in order to get the work done. You can tap in like you and I do with our guides, with our angels. We tap into them energetically. And we can do that with the soul or the spirit of the plants as well. So sometimes it will be enough to look at a photo or picture it in your head if you need to call on echinacea to boost your willpower before a difficult conversation, or you want to be a badass but still pretty on the outside. Imagine rose. For me, those are my symbols. Somebody else might have different ones. And that is fabulous, because just like I speak English, somebody else is going to speak French or Turkish. And so they might translate what that plant is whispering into a different use. Does that make sense?
It does, and I love that. I feel like you're opening up a whole area that I haven't really thought that
Uh-huh.
much about, and I'm feeling like there's little pools of also shamanic practices of we're thinking about the
Yes.
consciousness of the plants,
Yes.
learning more from them and learning their wisdom and how they can be of assistance, and it sounds like you're, like, just way ahead of the game with this as we're talking about it.
But, it's funny because I'm calling it just talking to plants, when really it is a form of shamanism. But I'm just more comfortable with the very simplistic terms, because I want to keep it open and accessible and not have people feel like, oh, well, gosh, I haven't gone through that 3-year course to become a plant shaman or whatever. We're running out of time,
Yeah.
especially like at this age. And I'm not saying that we're all going to keel over tomorrow, but time feels to be speeding up. And my mission feels like it's becoming more and more important that I get this out to as many people as I can. And sometimes the best way to do that is the simplest way. Like, what do they call that thing? Occam's razor, where um, the simplest answer is usually the one that's the right answer.
I also think with intuition that happens. Like, why did I think I wanted to plant mint? I wasn't my guides, telling me in my ear, Gina, you need to plant mint. It's just
Uh-huh.
that subtle of that thought popped in my head. I think I'll plant
Mhm.
mint. That seems like I like mint. It seems like that's a good area for it. So often it's
Exactly.
much more subtle. It doesn't need to be like the big aha, my guides
Mhm.
told me formally. So very
Right.
just simple, easy. I
And
love
then
that.
and then go back to what you said before about having faith. If that pops in and you agree, the universe says, "Hey, Gina, how about planting some mint?" And you're like, "Cool, universe. I think I'm going to do that. There's 50 bazillion types of mint. There's chocolate mint. Hello, what's wrong with that? There's spearmint. There's like the mint that you use to make mojitos. I mean, get all the mint and just have faith and trust that there's a reason that will appear to you why that appeared symbolically in your life at this moment. And it could be, again, Occam's razor. The easiest answer is that you have a friend come over. She loves mojitos. You make a mojito, you put in mint from your garden, and you have the most beautifully open-hearted discussion. And she leaves your home feeling like the best day of her life. That's the reason you planted the mint,
I love that. That just speaks so resonant
right?
with me. Yes, absolutely. So, in talking with you, your passion obviously comes through, as well as like the joy and how much fun you have with all of this. Where you can just see it, like your face lights up, that you just like, you're like, this is fun. And I find in my work, when it's those moments that I get very just excited and I love what I'm doing, and it's really more for the fun of it. That's where I feel like our souls really get to, like, shine through. It's
Yes,
not the "I have tos," which lowers the vibration. It's the "I get to," and, "Oh my gosh, I don't know what's gonna happen, but this is so cool." Like, as you're
right.
talking, I'm like, "I now wanna go out and plant different types of mint because it sounds fun."
Yep, and I'll
It's
come
that
to your house for those mojitos. I'll drive
I
6
love it.
hours. I will have that soul-based conversation. We'll
Yes.
both leave changed.
Oh my gosh, that would be amazing. So I have to ask, when you first started and you're, building this business, were you reluctant to share, a lot of like your background in terms of more of the spiritual and the energetic, where, in terms of how you presented the products to customers? Or were you always like 110% I'm in, I'm going to just own all parts of it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I was always all in because that was part of my agreement with the big guy. When I said, "I will do this for you," then how could I say, "Well, just a little bit of downloads or divine intervention or something went into this." But I will say that once I agreed to do that on kind of a mini dipping my foot in scale, it started to grow. And I gained confidence that even if I didn't completely know what I was talking about, I think you probably find this too. And I'm sure that most of the people who are listening to this find that what at first they think might be them making something up in their head, it's not us going crazy. It's it's those downloads. And that's another thing that I had to learn to trust, that when something came through with one of my clients in a healing session, I started to learn, yeah, that's not just me making stuff up that I think this person wants to hear. This is actually their people coming through, because I don't have an Uncle Charlie who talks about a horse with, 5 boots or something. Yeah, so I think that the more I started trusting, like we talked about before, pulling all those breadcrumbs in and trusting that all of those crumbs are gonna come back into the full loaf of bread at some point, the more I trusted what I was doing and the more I said, "I'm ready. I just want to keep going because this is fun. And I want to make life fun and beautiful and full for other people too. And it doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't have to be super intense. It's learning to trust what we observe. It's learning to trust that we already are magic, that those hugs that we give to people or that we get from people that kind of hold on a little bit longer than you go in for a hug and there's like a 1.5 second thing where you can linger, right? But when you go in for that other hug, like my daughter-in-law gives the best hugs in the entire world. And I think it's so cool because she's an obstetrician. And here she is. The first person to touch a baby is Sam. And I think the fact that she gives these hugs that hold on just a little bit longer and really make you feel connected. And when you get that idea to bake cookies. So when your kids come home in the afternoon and they've just had a day of it, and they come in and they smell the cookies or the bread or they see the flowers or whatever it is, it's those things that we do on kind of, I'll use air quotes, instinct, right? Our intuition. Those are really coming from spirit. That's where the word inspiration comes from. It means to be in spirit. So we're getting those downloads. We're getting those signs and symbols, those little nudges to do this or that. But to go back to your question, yeah, I think I was not always this confident in what I'm doing or talking about it, but that's been one of the bonuses. I've always been extremely reserved, extremely shy, but you get me talking about what I love. And I'm sorry, but I think I've just hijacked your whole podcast.
Oh, it's been wonderful. And I think people don't realize too that I would say in real life, I joke that like I'm an introvert in real
Oh,
life. I actually am a
same.
little bit more quiet and reserved, and it takes me time to think of my thoughts. So
Like,
it's
don't
really
send me to a party, please. Don't send
right.
me to a party.
Yes. Yes.
I
I'm
know
like,
the
yes.
entertainment.
But when we find something that we love, it's kind of that challenge of can
Yeah.
you lean in? And I think for a lot of people who are out there, they think sometimes you're going to have it all figured out beforehand, but most of us don't.
But it doesn't. And I think that's because we're continuing to grab mini breadcrumbs as we go. So when we go to teach or we go to speak at an event or hold a workshop, we're maybe a little bit more aware of how to read the energy in that room so that we can gear what we're talking about to how that energy wants to be led, maybe. Or, I mean, it just working our way through these kinds of things, what you and I do, what other healers, other practitioners, other shamans do, it's all a work in progress. It's a work of art that we keep coming back to and adding a little touch here and a little touch there and a highlight here and a little shadow there. It's all a work in progress. And if we ever get to be finished, well,
I'd
then
say
we're
it's a
finished. We're
yeah,
done.
and I'd say it's a masterpiece at that point, right? Because it's complexities, and that's part of the fun, I think, of having it constantly growing and changing and
Right.
shifting into new areas and tweaking things. That's part of what lights me up. I think that if we did it the same way, it would be very stale. There's no flow of energy or
Mhm.
expansion and growth. And I think you and I, we get together and our like creative minds just start firing
I
with
know. I
different
know.
ideas. So, but I think that's the fun in it of, okay, now what can I do? Now what can we look at this a little bit
Right,
differently?
right,
I think
right.
that's where we start to really grow and shift and change. I know one of your passions, and you've got many, but
I've
one
got
of them is really helping to empower women, especially those of us who are middle age and maybe starting a new business or have this dream or idea. So I wanted to ask you one, when did that come into being, right? Was that always a passion of yours, or is that something that's developed that you saw a need for?
It all happened really organically as an outreach of the products. as a designer, I was always working with people, and I refused to say, I work for you. Somebody would hire me to work with them on a home. And so I've always been a very collaborative kind of worker bee. But when I sort of moved over into this more spiritual business, it was a completely different little animal. But I did find that as people found my products, or as I went to events and met people in person and they would ask me questions, it was sort of the same type of woman, of a certain age, who maybe her children were growing. They were, like maybe late in high school, or they were in college, or she was an empty nester. And it was a time in her life where she could start focusing on herself with, what are the things I want to mend? What are the wounds, whether I know them or not, whether I can put a name to them? What needs healing? And for me, it was intuiting what they needed at that moment. And I think that's why I have so many clients and so many customers who keep coming back, because they've found what they were looking for in that product. And so that helped with one aspect of their life, and then they were ready to move on to something else. And a lot of my clients, people I've mentored, are now developing their own beautiful, brilliant practices. And so it's really fun for me to be that spiritual watering can that, God gifted me with all of these seeds, and I get to water them and nurture them. And then they go out and create their own seeds that somebody else will get to water. And so I think it's just this beautiful cycle of, of finding a mentor myself, and then becoming a mentor to women who are really open to exploring something beyond what we've been taught to act like, to believe in, that the universe is massive. And it's, we're small. As people, we're just small little critters, but we have this big capacity to love and to hope and to look for something bigger and better, and to help. And that's what I really want to encourage women who are ready to do that to do. And you know what? There are no classes on it. You just have to jump in and trust that your soul is going to guide you. I mean, sure, there are classes that you can take, but there's not one class that's going to say how to become a brilliant spiritual woman. No, it's following your soul, following your inspiration, following where spirit is leading you, and knowing that there is nothing wrong with having your religion and having your spirituality. You can have one or the other, but you can also have both of them. I mean, to me, growing up as a Catholic kiddo, looking back at it now, what is more magical than the Catholic Mass? I mean, when they ring their bells, when they burn their incense, what the heck are they doing? They're clearing space. I mean, it's
I
magic, people.
I grew up Catholic, so that it makes me laugh. And we have the angels and the saints, and, it's
Right,
like those
right.
are like kind of like guides that you can call on for assistance for specific
Yeah.
things.
I think religion can be a nice entry point into growing a spiritual practice. But as far as women wanting to step into their own power, I am here for it. I'm here to help you, to encourage you to hold your back while you're going through it. Whatever you need, I feel is part of my mission. So, and I'm so honored, that my soul got selected to do this work.
Well, I see with clients too often, There's something very special about helping someone identify that dream. And often people seem like they want almost like permission, like that
Mhm.
validation of like, absolutely, this lights up. You should follow that. Do you find that with people that you're mentoring and with your clients? Do you see that as well? That oftentimes it's like people know they're intuitive, but I feel like when someone who they feel is a professional says, you're really very deeply intuitive, it's kind of telling them something that they already know, but they were looking for someone to almost validate that for
Validate
them.
them. Absolutely. I was at an event yesterday, and uh, there is just a beautiful soul, and I think she's actually come to you for a reading in the past, but she has a very shamanic signature to her, which I kind of do a little bit if you consider the plant world as my shamanic environment. She is like off the charts. And so part of what I do is say, "Oh my gosh, you've got this. There is so much magic in you. And here's who I think you would do well to work with or get some guidance from." And so building a network for me is important because I don't have master skills in all of these things that my clients are coming to me for. I almost feel like I'm an entryway where they come through the front door of the mansion. And then I can say, okay, you need to go to the blue ballroom and you get to go to the velvet lounge. And so I'm their guide that way. And so that's why I love to collect beautiful souls like you, where I know this person, they need to see you because you are the guide that they need at this moment. And then maybe you will pass them somewhere else. But if we create this collective of of practitioners, of women, of aligned souls, then we basically have this organization where we can uplift anybody. Maybe I can't lift it, but you could, or somebody else, practitioner B, C, or D could do it. But I think it's important that those people in our network are aligned. Like, I wouldn't send somebody to you that I don't feel like would be honest in what they're coming to you for, or that would, on the opposite end, you would say, girl, that person, what the heck in the world? What are you doing sending her to me? So we're kind of like clearinghouses that way. We know the next person that this soul needs to linger with to learn a little lesson. And then we can move them through this beautiful network. Not sure if that answered the question or not.
Oh, no, I
That's
love
what
that.
came
It's
through.
such a really great, really, like I said, I always feel like you're very much like we always talk about that you throw the stone ahead of your time. And I feel like this is part of it that we're being asked to really view things a little bit differently. And again, that old school of I have to hold everything to myself because I'm afraid I'm going to lose clients or you're going to steal something. We're very open and heart based. So it's like, I'm going to share it. And so if you want to take what I have and what I use, great, like use it and then make it even better, make it like part of who you are. And I think that's what you're also about. It's like, let's share resources. And if I can refer people to you because that's what they're saying would be most needed, great. Like here's another resource because I feel like when we all shine, everybody gets to shine
Right,
a little bit brighter rather than
right.
trying to dim someone else
Uh-huh.
in order to try to make yourself feel a little bit brighter, if that makes sense.
It totally does. I mean, there's that word gatekeeping, right? Keeping all of this stuff inside those gates, but how much energy does it take to hold those gates closed? When spirit is saying, girl, it's time to open this up, to share what I've given you, the downloads that came from me, and you're going to hold them? That's probably a little against what the whole idea was to begin with. But don't get me wrong, people have stolen stuff from me. They've stolen my ideas. They've stolen products and copied them. But you know what? When actions are done in that way, it doesn't make them the same. I would have gifted them. I would have sat down and said, here's how you can make that a little better, or make it your own. Do it. Oh gosh, it's 11:11 as we're talking about
Yeah.
this.
Love it.
I would have been happy. These were people that I considered friends. So really, not to get onto that, but when we when we are given these gifts and we get to share them, I mean, that's where the beauty is. That's where the magic is. So
And I
yeah,
think there's a vibration. So when we talk, because we've talked about this before, and there's always a sting when someone, I think, takes
it does
something
sting. That's a
that,
good word.
we love, that, we put our heart, kind of our soul and our energy into, especially if there's like kind of that underhandedness to it. But I would say the energetics and whatever those products
Mhm.
are not the same, because the heart
Um,
energy isn't there. It's not your energy, your intention, your magic, that wisdom and knowledge, but that energetic signature, which uniquely makes it you. So, because I've seen, when we talk about intention candles, I mean, you could go online and you could find an intention, quote unquote, candle.
sure.
The energetic just is different.
Mhm.
And so the what I try to do for myself is I'm very aware of that. I pay attention. I won't purchase something just because it says it's something. I'm looking at it almost energetically. How does it make me feel? Do I want that in my home? What's
Mhm.
the energy to it? And I think more and more people are starting to kind of pay attention to those very subtle cues in terms of a product, because we're seeing that more and more. Anyone can create something, but what's the energy
Yeah.
behind it?
That leads me to this other thing that happened at this event yesterday. The same person who is so shamanic, she was there with her boyfriend, and she went past this booth, and she ended up buying a tea and something else, and she came up to me and she said, "I don't know why I bought this. I just felt like," you know, I don't know whether the vendor, like, jumped out at her and said, "You need this." She said, "I don't really know why I bought this, but I'm gonna give it to my daughter." And then she came back later, like an hour later, and she said, "I just had a reading with someone who said, 'What is happening with you? You're having a reaction to something. Did you just buy something that you didn't resonate?'" And I said, "Go throw that stuff." That she was having a reaction to this product because it was the energy of the product was so misaligned with her energy that she was literally breaking out without having even used it. She's that sensitive, and I think that that's an extreme example, but we all have this ability to say, "Gosh, is this coaster aligned with me? Do I really feel the love of the person that gave it to me?" Or, and if not, it's time to start divesting ourselves of these things that aren't uplifting our soul, our spirit, our body, because we have work to do, people. And we need to be on our game.
I agree. And I think it's important to be discerning. That's why I always
Yes.
say, you people need to pay attention in terms of intuitives, energy workers, anything that you do, you want to ask yourself that question. Does it
Mhm.
resonate with me? And just because it worked really well for a friend, that's great. It might be in resonance with them, but is it in resonance with you? And I think
Right.
sometimes we forget to take that step and ask. And I've done that myself as well. And I've kind of learned the lesson that just because someone recommends someone, you still want to ask that very important question.
Right. Right. Does this align with what I need, with where I'm going? Does it feel good? Does it feel right? It's actually a pretty simple question. And the more we ask it and the more we allow ourselves to feel into the answer, the easier it becomes. The next time we ask the question, the answer will come in a little more quickly. And then pretty soon we're like, it's almost automatic. We don't even need to ask the question. We know to draw it in or to step away.
I love that. Absolutely, because it's a practice. It's just like
Mhm.
anything else. The more you
Right.
practice it, the more you're gonna be able to do that almost instinctively then without even
Exactly.
thinking about it. But it's awkward at first sometimes to really stop and ask yourself, and you have to kind of pause and then listen to see what your response
Right.
is.
Right.
Mhm.
And that word practice is such a big word for me because I like to say you can practice magic or you can be magic. So I prefer to be magic. It's just who we are. It's how we move through the world as caring and observant and being the kind of people where we don't stop caring and putting the good stuff out there, even though sometimes we might be taking a risk. People might say funny things about us, or they may not get where we're coming from or appreciate us, or, you know, just that kind of stuff, that stuff that stings, as you said. But we persevere, we keep going because, look at what Joan of Arc said. I am not afraid. I was born to do this. And I think those of us who are going down this path right now, we're like little mini Jones. We were born to do this, so we can't be afraid to keep moving in the direction that Spirit is guiding us. They've got our back. They're not going to let us fall too far.
This is true. I often say that to people. Yeah, you've got your teams, like, you and I have our spirit teams, but
Mhm.
every person listening has their team in spirit
Right.
who are working with them, and especially on those like special projects. So it's like follow what lights you up and then also follow who you're guided to either mentor with or to learn with or someone that they just resonate with. I think it's an amazing thing.
Yeah. We're so blessed to be doing what we're chosen to do
Yes, that
and
is
what we
very, very
said
true.
yes to. We said yes.
I love that. I always say, like, if you ask the universe, usually that answer is yes. If it's those heart goals, that heart dream that you hold, yes, the answer is
Mhm.
usually yes. I love
Yes.
it.
Yes.
So I know that you do so much. It's hard for me to even keep up with, Deb. But can
Because I
tell a
keep saying
listener,
yes.
I say yes. You're always like, and I'm going to do this, and then I'll pivot, and I'll see you're doing something different. I'm like, oh my gosh, how does I've said this to you? I don't know how you have enough time in the
I don't
day
know.
for everything that you do. But can you tell listeners where they can find you and maybe some offerings or upcoming things that you have going on right now?
Sure, sure. First of all, I am going to be holding teaching my last kind of in person, it's online, but live plant magic course. It starts June 3rd. Speaking of so many things going on. And it's a 6-week course. It meets every Tuesday night but it's recorded. So if you can't make it live, you get the recorded download the following day. But we dive into what are the plants that are associated with the moon or the four archangels, the main archangels, the seasons, the elements. How do we honor those things with plants? What do the plants whisper to us about those aspects? So I'll be teaching that the last time that I'll be teaching it live because I'll be recording it. And then people can just purchase an evergreen version of it. My website is enchantedbotanicals.com. So you can hop on there, read a little bit more about me, why I love to do what I do. I've got a shop page if people want to look at any of my products. My calendar of events is on there where I'll be in person. You can find me on Instagram, which I love Instagram. My account is Enchanted Botanicals. Let's see, what else do I have going on? Also, if people do want to buy something from my shop, I will set up a 20% discount code for you if you use code Gina.
Oh,
So
I love that.
Gina. So yeah, I would love to. That would just be a way for me to thank the people that have listened, to thank you, Gina, for asking me to spend this time with you. Just, yeah, I'd be so happy to do that. So code Gina, just Gina, Gina. It'll probably have to be all caps because that's the way my website works it. But yeah, that will give you 20% off everything, which is a pretty good deal.
Oh my gosh,
Um,
that's so unexpected, and thank you so
I know
much.
that one just popped in. So I guess, it's
I
another sign and symbol.
I would really strongly encourage anyone. We talk a lot about vibration, and it's really what gravitates me towards your products is the high vibration. And it's not just me saying this. I use them in my own practice. multiple different types of your products. I have the energy clearing soap. I have the, intention candles just because I love the energy and the vibration, but they
Thank
also make
you.
really beautiful gifts for people. But I have to caution the listener that the problem is that I will buy them for other people and then I usually end up keeping them because they're kind of hard to let go of. So just be aware when you
Well,
go
at
to shop.
20% discount, you can grab 2.
I guess it's a good problem to have, but
Yeah.
I love it. Well, Deb, thank you so much for
Gina,
spending
thank
time. And I know
you.
you're busy, so I want to be aware of it. But hopefully, we will have you on again in the future because I know you and I could talk about
We could
many
talk for
different stuff.
days, days. So, when all of those comments come in like, "You gotta have her back,"
That
I'll
would
be
be
back.
great.
Yeah,
Perfect.
anytime. Thank you. Thank you,
Great.
Gina.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you.
so much.
This was such a great podcast. I hope the listeners found this one helpful. I know that I have so many takeaways from it. I'm very excited to check out the online plant magic course when it comes out this summer. It's something that I feel is lighting up, or as we would say, is a breadcrumb for me right now. And if you like Deb's work, I will make sure to put all of her information into the show notes. And as always, if you enjoyed this podcast, please consider leaving us 5 stars and following. We'd be really grateful. Thank you and have a wonderful rest of your day.